So hello and welcome to another episode of the Gaelic Statsman podcast. I'm your host Matthew Hurley. I'm joined tonight by An Cluiche host Seamus Brady to discuss this weekend's games. There's obviously less games this weekend, but as I say always in podcasts down through the years, more important. Like there's 4 All-Ireland football quarterfinals, a minor hurling final to look at, and then camogie group games to look at as well as intermediate and junior LGFA and camogie action to look briefly at as well. Shout out to our sponsors at Capture Athletics. If you want the best gear around, check them out if you haven't already. So yeah, Seamus, how are things? I suppose into the All-Ireland quarterfinals now. What a weekend in store that we do have of Gaelic football and hurling, to be fair, with the minor final.
Yeah, no, it's you're right there with your statement that there's less games but more importance, and then on top of that, more analysis to be done. You know, at the start of the year, you're using a lot of what you've saw in the league, where especially from the football side, a lot of people were talking about smoke screens being thrown, etc. And you know, you didn't really know how reliable that data was, but once you get into the championship, the data is there for you and you have more to go off, more to break down, more to talk about the players that are in form, out of form, matchups that you could potentially see, new stars that have emerged over the course of the season. There's more to get your teeth into and really analyze in depth. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this episode. I don't really know why. Don't know if there's anything different about this pod, but I think we'll find out pretty soon. Look forward to it.
Exactly. Really looking forward to this episode of discussing the games, obviously, and there is 1 week Gaelic Games news. But before that, we'll do a bit of housekeeping. So on last week's podcast, myself and yourself made a bit of a deal, Seamus. So let's see what exactly went down in that episode last week.
If Dublin and Cork, Dublin beat Cork, you wear a Dublin jersey. If Cork beat Dublin, I'll wear a Cork jersey. We could make that deal.
Going sidetracked on this game, but yeah, on a side note, deal. Let's go.
Okay. All right. We can get that sorted.
So,
it looks good
yes,
on you, man.
You aren't watching things, lads. You aren't hallucinating. I am wearing a Dublin jersey because obviously
this is what me and Aaron do to you. Get you on enough episodes, gradually you start to become a dub. That's what happens.
We'll
They
see
say
how
you can't
next.
take a dub out of Dublin, but you can take a non-dub into Dublin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've been in Dublin. Jesus, I was in Dublin obviously last weekend for the Cork Dublin game. But obviously, Seamus, just before we get into the weekend Gaelic games, and one story there. The game last week, obviously, Cork did lose by 3 points. It was close, but no cigar. But ultimately, I did say Cork would beat Dublin. I have to suffer the consequences now. I am wearing a Dublin jersey, so there you go.
Yeah, but still, you haven't been proven as wrong as Joe Brolly's been proven. I mean, if Cork are bluffers, then so are Dublin. If Cork are bluffers, then so are Roscommon. So, I mean, that puts an end to that point. But yeah, I mean, the game itself was really, really tight. That could have gone either way. The Dublin just kicked on and got those 2 points in a row going down the home stretch, which proved to be crucial. But Cork definitely have shown that they're to be taken serious in this championship. I know that they were, obviously out now, but they were a challenge for every team that they came up against. It was no easy game against Cork, for Kerry, for Dublin, for Roscommon. And these are all sides that have been at the top table over the last 2 seasons. So under Cleary, it's definitely moving in the right direction. And it's funny, we were talking about it on the last podcast, and I can't remember who, but someone put in a comment likening the John Cleary situation to Kieran McGeeney. And I do think
that was me, actually.
That was you.
Was it? I think it was me.
Could have been. But yeah, that's a great comparison to what situation Cork were in when Cleary took up the reins. That they were a team that had been bouncing around between Division 2 and Division 3 under Ronan McCarthy. And you need then somebody who can really, like a Jurgen Klopp style, like get rid of the dead wood and bring in a fresh new team to take you forward back to the level that you should be at. And I really think Cleary has the capabilities to do it. I think if he's given 7-8 years, I think Cork could be dining at the top table again where they belong.
Yeah, exactly. So there is more discussion on Cork's loss to Dublin and being out of the championship on the Southern Star podcast this week. I had the pleasure of interviewing former Cork footballer John Hayes. So he has a lot of thoughts on it. And ultimately, he wants Cleary to stay. I'd say most of Cork really wants Cleary to stay after the off-season. So we'll have to see what happens in terms of that. But Cork are out of the championship. Dublin are in the championship, but we'll discuss their game against Tyrone a little bit later on. A few comments coming in here. First of all, from Sean O'Malley saying it would be interesting to see how the new rules compare to playing in Croke Park, the big games, rather than smaller, tighter grounds. We seen it to an extent last week with Cork and Dublin. Only 1-2 pointer between the two sides.
That was interesting. They were discussing it on the Off the Ball pod with Owen. God, I don't know how. Owen Sheehan. Apologies, Jesus, I really should. Brain slow today, guys. Brain slow. Don't take any point I make serious on this pod. But Owen Sheehan was talking about it, and he was basically saying if you look at the games that we've had in Croke Park since the new rules have been introduced, the league finals weren't particularly great games. The Fermanagh Kildare game was probably the worst game that we've had all year, albeit the conditions were really, really bad for it. We've had a couple of bad games in Croke Park. Armagh Dublin was probably, it just wasn't that competitive. You knew the whole game that Armagh were going to win it, but the proof is in the pudding. And what we've seen at the provincial grounds have been amazing. That's what we've seen at the provincial grounds. Croke Park, on the biggest day of all, on the biggest days of all, the quarter-final, semi-final, final, like that's when it will be determined whether the new rules have been a success or not. Up until this point, they absolutely have. They've made the championship so much better than it was last season. Whereas this year, games between Galway and Down, like Galway and Down last season would have finished something like 16 points to a goal and 12. Whereas this year finished 2-26 to 3-21. Like there was way more scores, way more attacking football. There's way more incentive on attacking football. But when it comes down to the quarterfinals, the semi-finals, and the final, that's the games that everybody's going to remember. The finish to the championship, the closing stage is the biggest games of the championship. Did your rules make the games better or worse? And the trouble is that a lot of people have rose-tinted glasses when it comes to these things. A lot of people remember the games as being better than they were sometimes. An occasion could be amazing, but the game sometimes isn't actually that great. So that's what they're competing with. When they're talking about the games probably have to be amazing to convince people of that it is better, which it is.
Yeah, exactly. So there was two comments in here for Aces about the hurling. Obviously, we'll discuss the hurling senior games next week. But Cork supporters bought 90% of tickets for the 5th of July, and Aces also saying Kilkenny will punish most of Tip's errors that Galway didn't do. Okay, Aces, the football is this week. We'll discuss the hurling in depth next week.
Is that true?
Sean,
about which the tickets?
Kilkenny tickets?
No.
Oh, this comment. I don't know, to be honest. All I heard was, I'm going. Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, I
but
don't.
We'll be in different areas.
I'm in an alley stand, but I don't necessarily want to be. I don't want to be completely isolated on a Hill 16 full of Cork fans. That would be a massive boost as well to the Cork fans in terms of how they feel about, the Cork fans travelling away. If they can go up to Dublin and take over Hill 16, when they're playing against the Dubs, that's going to be a big morale booster.
Exactly. So Gavin is saying here about the football this time. It's still first year. Next year, players will use the rules. We should have less wides and better games. Then Sean O'Malley is saying about the jersey. Joe Brady, what do you think of that? Of course, absolutely. And Killy McMullen saying like the top Matthew. Shame Killy, no, I actually don't, but we'll move.
I do.
We'll move anyway, but the weekly Gaelic Games section, there is going to be more news in Gaelic Games, but we'll discuss it as the games go on. I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about in terms of that. But one county that isn't involved where the weekly Gaelic Games is relevant is Down. Obviously, Caelan Mooney retired from inter-county football during the week after scoring 2 points against Galway in his last appearance at inter-county level. Suppose Seamus, he has spent time down in AFL, but at times he hasn't been there in the Down team, but when he has been there, he's been an absolutely brilliant asset to the Down team. And even this year, coming off the bench and scored 2 points against Galway, Down are improving and they will get even better, I'd imagine, next season. But that is a huge loss, especially with, with Liam Kerr playing next season for Down. So, yeah, it's a big loss to lose Caelan Mooney for the Down team.
That's a big loss. And to be honest, that's the first I've heard of it. When did that happen?
It happened actually after he actually announced it on his Instagram. Obviously, right to do it. Obviously,
Okay.
that's brilliant. You know, the players announced the news themselves.
Yeah, no, that's the way to do it. You wouldn't want other people taking that scoop off them when a player serves his county with distinction the way that Quayle Mooney served down. It's obviously his decision to make when he wants to go, how he wants to handle it. I don't actually know. I want to look up what age is Quayle Mooney.
I think he's well over 30, I'd say, anyway, because he played in an
32.
underage 32.
32.
Yeah. So
well, like that's what I mean. Is like he's at that stage where, you know, on top of that, I think the key thing as well is that he wasn't starting this season, and that's something that you need to factor in, because if he was starting, would he be more inclined to stick it? Because the thing is the demands on the intercounty players now, especially with the new rules, the amount of trainings that they're doing, the way that they're taking care of their body, everything like that. It's extraordinary commitment for players that are still amateur players. Like, do they make money from their status as intercounty players? Yes, they do, but they absolutely deserve that. They still don't get paid per game the way that other professional sports do, and yet they commit their entire lives to the game. And if you're not getting game time to the level that you want, it makes a lot of sense why you would be tempted by retirement and everything like that. And the other thing is we just don't know how he's feeling injury-wise. It could be a vast number of things. It could be just personal life, maybe a job, maybe a family, just things that he needs to be more present in outside of Gaelic football. And based on that and based on the service that he gave down, he was one of my favourite players, especially during that 2015 season when Down put together a bit of a run. Him and Conor Harrison were both really good that year, I remember, for Down. But just he's the type of player that I love, that like flying wing back type that can also play at wing forward. Very kind of similar to like a Colin Boyle almost, or, you know, someone that's just pacey, Jack McCaffrey type, like that's pacey, very strong and dangerous going forward as well, very direct. So yeah, always loved watching him play. Big loss to Down. I'm sure Laverty will think about calling him up and trying to get him to change his mind. I mean, we've seen players come back like Michael Murphy, etc. But yeah, Mooney, incredible servant, and wish him all the best in his retirement.
exactly. So, and wish you all the best for Caleb Mooney. And as Gavin said in the comment, it's funny actually. He came in 2011, the year after Down won the All Ireland, which is it's mad, really. You know, but yeah, Caleb
Down
Mooney
won the All Ireland. Jeez, that jersey is having a serious effect on you. Did you forget about Cork's last All Ireland Football Championship win?
It felt like Down won the All Ireland because Down.
You telling me if I put on a Cork jersey, I just forget the
6 in a row.
It's just never happened.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, viewers there. Down won the All Ireland, Cork won the All Ireland Championship over Down in 2010. Obviously, it felt like Down won the All Ireland because Down wore a surprise packet that year, obviously, but obviously Cork won the All Ireland. But it is amazing just to say that Caleb Mooney came in after that year for Down. Look, brilliant servant for Down football, and wish him all the best on his retirement. And we will get into the games now. The first game is linked in Gaelic in the week of Gaelic games. It is Monaghan against Donegal in Croke Park at 4 p.m. on Saturday, live on GA Plus this game. But the reason I'm saying it is connected to the week of Gaelic games because Donegal GA have had a bit to say about this game, obviously. I will put up the statement here from Donegal GA about this game. So a spokesperson from Donegal GA County Board states they formally requested a Sunday fixture in lieu of Saturday for the upcoming weekend. No other county has played as many matches as Donegal this year's championship. To compound the physical and mental demands, those 8 games are played in the 11-week window. Match number 9 this Saturday, less than 12 weeks after playing Derry in the Ulster Senior Football Championship preliminary round on April 6th. On that basis, we thought it wholly responsible to fully justify to seek an extra day of recovery in time for our players this weekend. And that's a statement there from Donegal. And then statement ends with 5 full stops at the very end of it, Seamus. First of all, before we even discuss the game, because it is an interesting game to discuss with Donegal, Monaghan, both sides are going well this season. But in terms of that statement, I do agree with Donegal GA because because of the simple reason Donegal have 6 days to prepare from their win over Louth last weekend to this game against Monaghan. Kerry, for example, have 8 days after their win over Cavan. And as well as that, Kerry were the earliest preliminary quarterfinals to play last weekend. They're the latest to play this weekend in the quarterfinals. Donegal were the latest preliminary quarterfinals to play last weekend. They're the earliest quarterfinals to play this weekend. I will say, Seamus, I know there's TV deals and things like that, and Armagh and Kerry, there would be uproar if that was on GA+. But in terms of fairness, you would imagine you had to put the Donegal game Sunday, couldn't you? Had you?
That's the other thing as well, is like the systems that you said there, those systems are rigid. And the thing is going into these group stages, every team knew the situations that you needed to top your group. And I do agree with what you said. I agree with what you said that it is, and I completely empathize with the players. The system, the structure we know is already too dense. It's already too tightly packed. And that's just a wider problem that we need to look at, having a little bit more flexibility when it comes to the season. Like moving the All-Ireland finals back into the first 2 weekends of August for me would do no harm whatsoever. Moving the leagues forward into the places where the preseason competitions used to be in January and having a little gap there between the league and the championship would do no problem. Absolutely either. And this is the type of result that you get with situations like this. Like me and you said this at the start of the year. Me and you said, it's the same thing basically year on year. When we get to this stage of the season, we'll be talking about fixture congestion and we'll be talking about games that are behind the paywall. When we get into the later part of the year, we'll be talking about different club championships and issues that's bringing up. Then we get into the early part of the year, we'll be talking about players playing too many games, college, etc., and a few injuries will come up. And those type of issues haven't really gone away. But with Donegal, the problem is once they lost that game to Tyrone, once they lost that game and they weren't going to top their group, then it is out of their hands. And I'm echoing the point that Tommy Rooney made on the Off the Ball pod, which he made really, really well, and that you have full empathy for the players and they don't deserve to be in this position or situation. But they lost that power when they didn't top the group, and now it's completely out of their hands. If they top the group, then it wouldn't be in this situation. But I still agree that they are being hard done by here. But I also think McGuinness is using it as a rallying cry for the team again to get them right up for this game, and a rallying cry for the fans as well. Because if you look at McGuinness, like this is straight out of the McGuinness playbook. I mean, 2011, 2012, in his first term as Donegal manager, those first 2 years, he picked fights with everybody. Picked fights with Pat Spillane when they said that there was no man of the match in that game between Donegal and Antrim, which I think, again, McGuinness was fully within his rights to do. On top of that, there was a scene in his book, I think, where they were saying that the minor match before Donegal were due to play had gone to extra time. So Jim McGuinness said to his players that they were only going to leave the changing room when they were ready to leave the changing room, not when they were told to leave the changing room, if that makes sense. So he is a manager that you would want on your side because he doesn't take any shit. If he feels like his team is being screwed around, messed over by the fixture lists, by the planners, by the organisers, he wants to make sure that Donegal are treat the best and treat just as well as any other team in the country. I do think his whole statement that he said, where he said, it's only happened because it's us, as if the GA have some sort of problem with Donegal, that's complete nonsense. But he is making sure that Donegal aren't getting hard done by compared to other counties. And for that, that's a manager that you would want on your team. I think he goes a little bit too far with his statement saying like, it only happens because it's us. But he is a manager that will go to war for you. He's a manager that would not leave any stone unturned to make sure that you are best prepared for the game as you possibly could be. So all of that, it's a balanced assessment, I think, from me. I think it's like, I do empathize with them. They lost control over over how they could affect what day they'd play on when they didn't top their group. But I still feel like they've been had done by here in this situation. And it's a result of a wider problem, that is the season is too condensed. We need to move the start of the season a little bit earlier and the end of the season a little bit back.
Exactly, and there's two comments about this game in general and timekeeping and things like that. Brian O'Reilly was saying Donegal are correct, asking to play the amount of games that they've asked is far too much. The health and safety of the players needs to come first. And Brian is also saying here, Jim McGuinness is using this as a motivation to get his players and fans up for it. Sean O'Malley has an interesting comment in here. We will discuss the game in detail now. Monaghan is a dangerous game for Donegal. Monaghan are going really under the radar with quality players with a lot more recovery time in their favour. Gavin is in here. Donegal was so divided in 2023. Jimmy's doing the opposite. He's creating an us against the world narrative, uniting the fans, players and board. That's a very interesting comment. And I think that's what Jim McGuinness is set out to do. It. What I noticed with the Donegal players, whatever was happening off the pitch in terms of the Loud game, whatever what Jimmy was saying after the Mayo game, they all seemed united. Even when Loud were trying to build up kind of seat mentality themselves and trying to get back into the game before half-time, Ryan Bird scores that point at Ballybofey, and I think, okay, Donegal are in massive trouble here. But then in the second half, I know they had the luck with the black card for Peter Lynch at really the start of the second half. But at the same time, they got together and they ploughed on to victory after that. Every player seemed to step up for Donegal, even the players that weren't scoring as much. Like I even noticed Shane O'Donnell scored or assisted, I think it was 7 points, and he only scored 1 point of the day. So like everybody's kind of chipping in around the Donegal team right now, and that is a very interesting point by Gavin.
It certainly is. Like, it's a really, really well made point by Gavin. And you look at Jimmy's first tenure, and there's a lot of similarities. The man management has always been one of the strongest points. It's always been one of the things that he's been best at. He's always able to get players to run through brick walls for him. He's always able to get players to put their body on the line for him. And he always manages to create that mentality in a team that it's us against the world. And he, as manager, is leading from the front. And he is making sure in these instances that Donegal are not messed around. They're not treated differently to other teams. I don't agree with his comment saying, oh, that only happened because it's Donegal, as if the GA have some sort of problem with Donegal. That's absolute nonsense. But he is making sure that they are not going to be treated differently to any other team. He's making sure that they are not, by virtue of how the fixtures are laid out or how this calendar is laid out or how the season is laid out. As I was saying, it's rigid. So once Donegal didn't top their group, they lost control over what was going to happen this weekend. So therefore, it was out of their hands. But Jim still knows that even though that's the case, they're still being hard done by. And he's making sure that he is making it known that he doesn't approve of this. He's making it known that he's leading from the front. He's fighting with the players on this. And that makes a really unified and dangerous Donegal. So yeah, he's a fantastic manager to be under. He's a manager that will go to war for his players, and that's why his players will go to war for him.
Exactly. So, and another kind of interesting point that I wanted to come to, like, was Sean O'Malley made this, that Monaghan is a dangerous game for Donegal. Even though they don't have a standout score, what's noticeable about the top scores list from playing overall, their top scores, Meath Bannigan with 116. But then after that, you've Jack McCarron with 115, Rory Beggan, yes, the goalkeeper, lads, with 16 points in the championship so far. Daisy Ward even 12 points so far in the championship with 2-pointers. Conor McCarthy 1-7, Stephen O'Hanlon 1-7. These guys are really chipping in for Monaghan, and I think this is what Monaghan needed, especially with Conor McManus retiring last year. All of these players not necessarily standing out as an individual unreal player, but as a collective, they look really, really good at the moment, Monaghan. And as commenters are saying at the moment, they are gathering a bit of form. Like, the only games I think they've lost so far, they lost against Roscommon in the league, which was an off day, down when they were probably playing a second team in the league. The game against Donegal in the championship, where they could have easily got a 2-pointer to level it if they knew the rules properly at that point. So Monaghan are really, really flying under the radar, it seems.
They are, and the other thing is we've seen it this season how they put it up to teams, and we saw it in the Ulster Championship with that fiasco around the hooter at the end in that game. Like, that was right down to the wire. Monaghan were nearly through to the next round of the Ulster Championship. And like, they've shown their ability to compete with anybody that they come up against. And the thing is with Monaghan is, again, they're at a similar position that they need to get to that next level now. They need to beat that team. They need to beat, whether it's Kerry. They are at the similar stage, I would say, to where Armagh were last season. That they're very good. Everybody knows that they're very good. Everybody knows that they have the capability to take that next step. Everybody knows they have the capability to beat a team in a massive game. But they haven't quite done it yet. So therefore, this weekend presents them with a hell of an opportunity. They're playing against a team that they know very, very well. They're playing against a Donegal team that, as we're talking about, won't be 100% rested for this game. Monaghan are well rested. They had the week off last week. Nice training camp. Whereas Donegal had to go through a difficult first half against Louth before the second half was a lot easier. But still, that's another day out on the road. That's another day where you've ran your legs into the ground. Playing under McGuinness, you're not going to give anything less than 100%. And, you know, for Monaghan, that's music to their ears. Another tough challenge on Donegal. Going to hamper them coming into this game. And given how close Monaghan were to Donegal earlier in the season, you know that it's not going to be an easy game. And the reality is as well, in Croke Park, Monaghan have played there under the new rules. Donegal haven't. Could that be a benefit to Monaghan too?
Gavin saying in here, the GA are trying to stop Beggan with tweaks to the rules, but it's not stopping him. Beggan is a massive weapon for Monaghan. And honestly, like, the thing is with Monaghan, and I think this is well documented right now, and I've seen it with my own eyes with going up to the scheme with Cork and Monaghan during the league. If you concede a free outside the 2-point arc, you're doomed if you're playing Monaghan, because Beggan's going to convert it. Each and every angle, he's going to do it. So that's another reason Donegal have to be very careful with A, their discipline, because the discipline rule is still up with the 50 metres at some instances, and B as well, do not foul outside the arc, because you will be punished severely.
Yeah, that's true. And like, you look at it as well, that was one of the key reasons. I'm looking back at the game here between Monaghan and Donegal, and Monaghan, again, that day, crucified them with any ill discipline that they had. And going down that home stretch, like, if Donegal had fouled a Monaghan player outside the arc there with just 2 points between the teams, you know that Beggan probably would have equalised. Like, that was how tight that game was. So in this instance in Croke Park, it's absolutely vital for Donegal that they maintain their discipline. But going down the other way, which we haven't spoken about yet, Donegal are also superbly efficient at kicking 2-pointers themselves. And I feel like players like Darragh O'Boyle, Michael Murphy, Kieran Thompson, who across the span of this year, I haven't even mentioned McBurty and Gallen, over the span of the year, they have all showcased an ability to kick 2-pointers. Michael Langan, another one. They've all clearly been practicing it. And they need to be on their A game in order to counteract Rory Beggan's ability to kick those 2-pointers. So I think that's a massive factor to take into account as well, the shooting efficiency of the likes of O'Boyle, Murphy, McBurty, Gallen. These lads need to be on their A game in terms of the shooting, because Beggan will be. So it's just up to Donegal to match that.
Exactly. So, and like, even you look at Donegal score so far, like, Michael Murphy's obviously on top with a total, I think, 34 points. I'm just double checking now. Yeah, 34 points. Pat McBrearty with 118. Interestingly enough, he's been on the bench over the last few games and it's probably been used as an impact sub for Donegal. One guy that I want to concentrate on as well, Conor O'Donnell. He scored 1-1, I think, last weekend, 2-14 from play. He's in the top scores for the play charts as well. I think he's 10th to the list there. He's been going under the radar as a decent player. So is Shane O'Donnell. I'm not sure Shane and Conor related right now, but like the two O'Donnells, like Shane in terms of assisting and Conor in terms of scoring, they're actually doing a lot of damage with Donegal. And O'Shea Gallen as well, who was very, very accurate last weekend.
And that's always what you wanted on the team. There's something that Donegal are blessed with, is they have their obvious threats, the ones that claim all the headlines, like the Michael Murphys, like the Patrick McBreartys. But that allows players like Gallen, like Conor O'Donnell, to fly under the radar. And another one that flies under the radar is still Darragh O'Boyle. Like, Darragh O'Boyle will crucify you with the 2-pointers that he kicks, because not only will he kick a couple more or less every game, but he will kick them at very important stages. He'll kick them just when you feel like you're reeling Donegal back in. He'll kick them when Donegal need a big score. And O'Boyle often gets left in positions where he's open. So Monaghan needs somebody to mark him as well. I would imagine it will be Conor McCarthy that will pick him up, because not only will that then be someone who can do a job on him defensively, but that will be someone that can put him on the back foot and drive forward at him and create a situation where O'Boyle needs to track back a little bit more and can focus on doing damage down the other end. That for me is crucial. Conor O'Donnell's a very, very solid footballer. And it looked for a while when Murphy had gone and when McBrearty was not as central, it looked for a while like O'Donnell was going to be the one to take the mantle as Donegal's main forward. He was definitely the one who was performing best in that league season where Donegal were really poor, the one under Paddy Carr and then subsequently Aidan O'Rourke and Paddy Bradley. They were not at the races at all during that league campaign, but Conor O'Donnell actually did perform pretty well, and he's still contributing to this team today now that they've got the band back together. Shane O'Donnell is a very industrious player then. Like Shane, he's capable of playing anywhere around that middle third. He's a really, really mobile, industrious player. Someone that's kind of very similar to Ryan McHugh, a Padder Mogan and that type, that he's a crucial link man between defence and attack and gets through an awful amount of work around that midfield. And you look at Jim McGuinness again, similarities between this and his first reign as Donegal manager. Like the players that were so underrated from that Donegal team, in my opinion, were the Anthony Thompsons, the Ryan Bradleys, like these players that were around the middle and they got through a Trojan amount of work. Leo McClune is another main one, that they got through a Trojan amount of work every game between defence and attack. And I think you look at this team now, Ryan McHugh, Padder Mogan, Shane O'Donnell, these lads are crucial for Donegal, getting the ball from defence to attack, setting up scores for the likes of Michael Murphy, McBrearty, Gallen.
Yeah, exactly. Finn Barrort is really impressed me. Cornerback as well, 19 years of age. He's been absolutely electric this season for Donegal. It's coming up to prediction time now. Gavin is saying here, if Donegal lose, does Murphy stay on? As this feels like a last hurrah one for the road vibes. Just before we make a prediction, Seamus, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think it is Murphy's last year?
There's a good case to be made for it. I mean, he's 37 years of age, isn't he? Like how much longer do you have left in the tooth when you're that age? And the other thing is as well is that there's a lot of omens pointing that this kind of has to be Donegal's year. This has he won it in a second year last time. This is the second year now. He won the Ulster title back-to-back in his first time. He's won the Ulster title back-to-back again. The only thing left now to make this more or less identical to his first reign as Donegal boss is to go and win the All-Ireland. That's the only thing really that he has left to do. So a lot of signs are pointing that it might be Donegal's year. And when that's the case, I've no doubt that McGuinness is telling his players. If you watch the Jimmy's Winning Matches doc, you'll see how much he placed an emphasis on getting them in the right psychological frame of mind. I've no doubt that he's saying to his players every single training session, you're going to have a Sam Maguire medal in your pocket by the end of the year. No question about it. You're all going to have All-Ireland medals in your pockets. So the players are definitely believing that they're going to be All-Ireland champions by the end of July. And that makes it that they're very much going all in then. So if Donegal don't win the All-Ireland, it's going to be a hammer blow to players like Murphy, McBrearty, who might be in the twilight of their career. So I will probably say yes. I probably would say yes. I think he would maybe go again if they don't get over the line.
In terms of prediction time, Seamus, do you think Monaghan could cause a shock, especially with Donegal having the 6 days turnaround, or do you think Donegal could do it? Another factor as well, Donegal actually, what you know of the GA Plus commentary, they sent the subs and the unused panel members in early with about 10 minutes to go. So the players didn't interact with any fans or anything like that. They weren't signing autographs, straight down to the dressing room after the game against Louth. In terms of prediction, who do you think will win that game? And do you think that kind of facet from Donegal will play any part on Saturday?
No, I don't think that's anything really that can read into this game. Like, as far as I'm concerned, there's tiny little things that you can do at the end of games that can help you feel a certain type of way. But the reality is whether Donegal celebrate with the fans until, the last person left the stadium or whether they went down the tunnel early, this game is still going to be just a close game between two very, very evenly matched teams. And the one thing that I do take into account and do think that we can look back on and say, okay, relax a little bit, is when teams over celebrate wins, when teams show that they're clearly carried away with and that they don't realize that there's still a job to do. Like Mayo 2021 is, after they beat Dublin, is a very good example of that. Like they were way too over the top in terms of how they celebrated that. And then Tyrone were just waiting for them in the final and Tyrone. But I still think, look, the reality is that they lost that game for reasons that were other than celebrating over the top against Dublin. If they had beat Tyrone in that final, nobody would have talked about that. So Tyrone were just the best team in Ireland that year. Anyway, getting back to the point, Donegal Monaghan, we saw in the Ulster quarter final, how evenly matched these two are. They are both superb teams. Monaghan have taken massive steps under Gabriel Bannigan this season. They have superb players. And as you mentioned there, we were always talking about who the successor was going to be to McManus. Is it going to be McCarron? Is it going to be David Garland? Is it going to be Micheál Bannigan? These key players, as you rightly said there, they've all stepped up and done more. And they've kind of made up for McManus's absence by all chipping in with more and more scores each. And Beggan, as Gavin said there, Beggan is such a weapon, and he's just adapted with the tweaks that they've made to the rules. He's just, altered his playing style and remained just as effective for Monaghan. And Donegal's discipline in this game is going to have to be fantastic, because Beggan, as you're right, will punish them for every infraction that they make. I just feel Donegal have too much. I feel like Donegal will have too much. I feel like the form of Michael Murphy, Gallen, McBrearty, and there is a part as well that the aura definitely is playing a part here for me. They managed to get over the line in that quarterfinal against Monaghan, but they were very, very lucky to do so. Monaghan nearly caught them cold, and I've no doubt McGuinness is going to be absolutely roaring at his players that remember how close you were to getting beaten in that quarterfinal. I think it's going to go down to the wire, but I think Donegal shade it. I'm going to go Donegal by 2.
Yeah, I'm probably going to go Donegal as well, but they are forewarned at how good a team Monaghan are in this season championship. So I'm going to go for Donegal to win it. Although Denise disagrees with both of us, Monaghan to win.
Okay.
Here, we'll have to see.
Yeah, it's fair though. It makes sense. They've had the break and they nearly beat them in the Ulster Championship.
Yeah, exactly. Brian O'Riordan saying in here for the 4 quarterfinals, wins for Donegal, Dublin, Galway, and Armagh. That's his predictions over the weekend. So we will move on to the next game now, and it is obviously Tyrone against Dublin in Crow Park Stadium behind us there on Saturday at 6:15 p.m. live on GA+. And there's one comment in here about this game early on, I think was by Sean O'Malley here. Con is pivotal to Dublin if they're going to beat Tyrone. You could see it in the Cork game. Dublin really suffered in his absence without the best target man in the forward line. I don't necessarily agree with that, Sean. I think Dublin actually... No, I think Con is the best target man, but I don't think they really struggle against Cork. Like, you look at the forwards that they did have to pitch. Sean Butler stood up, Costello stood up, especially Paddy Small stood up. So you have to take into account that those kind of players stood up as well. And they still won the game. They still won the game against them. And you have to admit, that is a decent enough Cork team. They were there, that wanted to win. Like, you could see John Cleare's reaction afterwards. He was devastated afterwards.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Dublin needed Costello to step up the way that he did. They needed Bugler to step up the way that he did. But the reality is Dublin are a far better team when Conor Callaghan's on the pitch. I mean, he means that, he takes a burden off a lot of the players that had to step up and carry Dublin through that game against Cork. And he does a lot of heavy lifting, not only in the forward line for what he scores, but what he sets up for the people, the catches that he makes from kickouts sometimes directly as well. He's an absolute Rolls Royce of a footballer, and we need him if we're going to go all the way. We need him. No other way to put it. The players that we don't have this year that we've had in previous years, the Fentons, the Mannions, the McCaffreys, we need Con. We need Con at his best. This game against Tyrone, it's absolutely a monumental challenge for both teams. I think you look at Tyrone and the players that they have, the squad depth that they have is absolutely outrageous. Players returning into the team like Conor Myler, Owen McElhone, the under-20 footballer of the year, drops on to score a point against Cavan as they top the group. That was a tour de force that day from Tyrone against Cavan, scoring 31 points. Darren McCurry, consistently, in my opinion, the most underrated corner forward in the country. He's just so solid. Every game, 6 points, 7 points from Darren McCurry. He's so deadly accurate, and all the attention in the Tyrone forward line is usually on the likes of Darragh Canavan, but Darren McCurry is absolutely deadly and can really, really punish you if you're not keeping an eye on him. So Dublin will have to have someone prepped for him. The midfield battle as well is absolutely crucial, because we were talking about Peadar O'Cofaigh Byrne's performances, and we also talked about Killian McGuinness's performances. They're going to get an almighty test in this game. Brian Kennedy and Con Kilpatrick are as good a midfield pairing as you'll find anywhere in the country, and going up against them is going to be a huge test for what is a very, very young Dublin midfield pairing and what is a fairly inexperienced midfield pairing. And I wouldn't be surprised if Desi throws Lahif in there last minute to kind of try and bulk it up in terms of experience.
Yeah, exactly. I was very impressed with Patrick Coffey burnout the other day against Cork. Obviously, 90% retention rate on Dublin's kickouts the other day. Cork only got 50% of theirs. It was clear who won the midfield battle, and it was Dublin that won it. Gavin O'Reilly singing here. But on Sean's point, Cork's a solid team, but Tyrone are a different animal altogether. I don't think Dublin will win if they perform like they did last week. Thoughts on that, Seamus? Is that kind of a disrespect to Cork in a way? Or is it just say that Tyrone are just a high level?
It's not a disrespect to Cork, no. I just think that Tyrone are a little bit better than Cork right now. And I think if Tyrone were to play Cork, I would make Tyrone favourites to win this game. So by that logic, Dublin have to play at a higher level, because I don't think a 3-point gap against Cork would be enough to beat Tyrone. I think Tyrone genuinely, I mean this, I really, really rate Tyrone. Like, I really think they're really good. And I think we're going to have to be at absolute A level. I think we're going to have to overperform to beat them. I really believe that. I think that they are, in terms of talent, in terms of squad depth, I think you have to consider them, Tyrone, in the top 3, in my opinion, for the All-Ireland. Like, they went away to Donegal and beat them. Nobody's done that this season. Tyrone also, though, are capable, what we've seen, they are also capable of completely dropping the ball. So Dublin have to, be there for the inconsistencies that might be in Tyrone's performance. Like, I mean, Tyrone followed up that win against Donegal by losing at home to a Mayo team who had just lost to Cavan the week previous. So Tyrone are capable of being inconsistent, but if they're on their A game, this is going to be an almighty test for Dublin. I still think we're well capable of doing it, because the other thing as well is people have written off Dublin this year only for Dublin to turn around with a massive win. Going down to Galway after the Meath game, people were actually talking, like, it's hard to remember now, people were talking about how Dublin were going to get annihilated by Galway. Like, people were saying Galway were going to hammer us. We went down there and beat them. So there's still a lot of kick left in this Dublin team. And maybe it's the bias, I know that, but I really think we are going to win this. I think the confidence that those lads have in terms of, I don't think you cannot buy the experience and the habits of just getting over the line in quarterfinals, getting over the line in semifinals. That has been one of our key calling cards over the past 2 years, with the exception of last season. That has always been one of our key calling cards, is our experience in getting over the line in big games and the know-how that is in that panel. And if Con returns, if he's at 100%, I think we'll shade it in a very, very dramatic game by a point.
Interesting prediction there. Just on Tyrone, obviously, like, their scores, Darren McCurry 35 points, Darren Canavan at 114. A guy that's really, really stood up in terms of 2-pointers on crucial moments. Not scoring as much as the other players, obviously, but in terms of 2-pointers, he's really stepped up. Peter Hart from Errigal Hira has been absolutely brilliant. You were saying at the start of the season, a guy that was going to be excelling on the 2-pointers, you would have said David Clifford, Shane Walsh, to an extent Conor Callan, Rory Beggan, obviously. Those were Rian O'Neill, they were the obvious ones. I don't know, was it just me, Seamus? I wouldn't have seen Peter Hart as a clutch guy for a 2-pointer. Like, he's done absolutely remarkable this season. Not
just for Tyrone, but for Errigal Kieran too. I mean, his performance in the All-Ireland Club Final, I know he was on the losing team, but his performance that day, and it's unfortunate because the Club Final doesn't get as remembered by the wider GAA fan base as county finals, but that performance by Peter Hart in that final for Errigal Kieran against Coola was one of the best individual performances I've seen in an All-Ireland final. It was just, he single-handedly dragged Errigal Kieran back into that game. He scored that absolutely ludicrous goal into the top corner that nearly made Brian Tyres lose his voice. And he single-handedly dragged them back into that game. And this is the other thing as well, is Tyrone, this is another one of the massive strengths that they have, is they know now if they need a clutch 2-point kicker, they know who to turn to. They know to turn to Peter Hart. They know to turn to Darren McCurry. That those lads, Niall Morgan, those lads are the ones that are capable of banging over a 2-pointer for Tyrone when they very, very badly need it. Brian mentioned there about the previous meetings between Dublin and Tyrone. In knockout football, Dublin's record against Tyrone over the last 15 years is really, really, really good. And that's one of the main reasons that I'm supremely confident in this team. Tyrone's end to the season over the last few years has been flat enough. They've usually gone out on a bad performance. And this is Malachy O'Rourke's first year with them. And what I'm picturing could happen is it could be a Mayo-style situation where Mayo beat Kerry, for example, in 2023 and absolutely blitzed them down in Tralee or Killarney. I can't remember which one it was in. Killarney. They beat Galway and beat them, and they finished that year on a very flat performance against Dublin in the All-Ireland Quarter Final. And I'm thinking with Tyrone going away to Donegal and showing their hand the way that they did, I think maybe Dublin might beat them in Croke Park, which is what I'm going for.
Just one final question before I get my prediction in. What sort of game do you think we'll expect? Because I think it'll be one of two. 2008, where Tyrone absolutely shocked the hill, shocked every part of Croke Park, and put in an absolutely brilliant display, scoring 3 goals. Or 2010, when...
It shouldn't be a shock.
A shock in a way that Tyrone just absolutely blitzed Dublin, and the game is over with the click of the fingers. Or another scenario, 2010, as Brian mentioned there, where Dublin brings savage intensity. Tyrone are just way off. They had 14 wides, I remember that day in 2010, because the commentator, that was the stat they always mentioned. I remember that day. What sort of game do you think we'll expect, if any? Would it be the 2010 version or 2008?
But the thing is as well, that I don't think we can talk about the 2010 one. I think we can look at maybe, if we're talking about Tyrone being off it and Dublin being supremely on it, I think we have to talk about the 2017 All-Ireland semi-final, where Cluxton hit that amazing kick out to Niall Scully, and then Tyrone sat in and Dublin just picked them apart and destroyed the blanket defence that day. Like 2010 was such a significant result because we hadn't, up until that point, throughout the 2000s and the Pillar Caffrey years and the Tommy Lyons years before, we had always lost to the Kerrys, the Tyrones, the Armaghs. We'd always lost to the teams that would eventually win the All-Ireland. And Tyrone, even though they were probably tipping over into, the decline of that team, they definitely weren't at their peak anymore. For us to beat them in an All-Ireland quarterfinal was hugely significant. And that was one of the key results in Pat Gilroy's era that eventually, I know we lost to Cork in the next round, but Cork were ready for an All-Ireland that year. That teed us up to go and win the All-Ireland in 2011. I fully believe that, beating Tyrone and Croke Park, getting that confidence from that, and then going toe-to-toe with Cork in a way that had us believe that if Cork were capable of winning it, then we were capable of winning it too. And that was a huge result. This, I would say Tyrone are more now the team that need that big win. And I think they've too much talent. They've too much ability. They've too many amazing players that are of a good age profile now to have a good period of dominance. They've too many of them to not eventually get that win. They've too many. It's coming. Like Tyrone, another All-Ireland for Tyrone is on the way. I'm not sure when it's going to arrive. You see, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm getting nervous. The more I'm really nervous for this game. I really think this could be where our season ends. I'm saying it won't. I'm saying we're going to be able to get over the line based purely on experience, based purely on getting over the line. And I think Croke Park as well, our experience of playing with the new rules in Croke Park versus Tyrone's might be a big help to us. 2-point win for Dublin, 1-point win for Dublin, but I am not confident in that prediction, I have to be honest, because I think the more I look at Tyrone, the more I look at the threats that they have, I think they could do a lot of damage going forward. Dublin by 1.
Interesting stat, actually. The last 2 managers for Tyrone, Mickey Hart and the combination of Brian Dewar and Fergal Logan, won All-Irelands in their first year in charge. So...
very interesting.
Is that going to be anything for Malachy O'Rourke? I'm not sure. In terms of this game, I'm sorry, I think Tyrone might edge it.
Yeah.
I think, look, McCurry, Kilpatrick's flying. Obviously, Peter Hart is flying at this present moment in time. Derek Hannafin as well. Now the under 20 season's over. Owen McElhone can be let off the leash. Will Shea O'Hare get a chance at the team as well? Like, it's going to be very, very interesting from a Tyrone point of view. Aidan Donaghy has been very good, I think, not in terms of scoring, but in terms of link-up play, I think, for Tyrone this year as well. I'm going to say Tyrone, but it's going to be very, very tight to call this game, obviously. So that is a Saturday game's call.
I do agree with you. I think there's no way Dublin hammer Tyrone. I think there's only 3 ways this ends. Either we beat them by a point, they beat us by a point, or they hammer us. I think that's the only 3 ways this ends.
Yeah, exactly. So, but we are differing on our predictions there. I'm going for Tyrone. Seamus is going for Dublin, but we'll have to see what happens. Liam, thanks for the comments.
Oh, yes. And he still predicted against us with that jersey on. Unbelievable.
Yeah. You know what? That's retribution. But we will move on to Sunday's games in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship Quarter Final, starting off with Meath against Galway. This is on Sunday at 1:45 live in RT2. In terms of Meath to be in this situation, it's a miraculous achievement, you have to say, for Meath. And when you look at the sides that they have beaten this year, they've beaten Dublin, they've beaten Kerry, they beat Cork after Cork beat them earlier on the league campaign as well. They beat an Offaly team that seemed to be on an upward trajectory when things seemed to be going wrong at the end of the league campaign. They've had a miraculous year under Robbie Brennan. They, just on Meath first, they deserve to be here 100%.
Yeah, they're here on merit. I mean, if you're in a year where you beat Dublin and you beat Kerry, you are one of the top 8 teams in the country, I think, in most seasons in Gaelic football history. Like, they have been absolutely fantastic. And you look at the way that they lost that Leinster final to Louth, and the way that Meath bounced back from that, the way that they didn't let it derail the rest of their season has been a credit to Robbie Brennan, his management team, and the players. The way that they've bounced back, the way that they pulled themselves together again and just got back on the horse. Still a job to be done here. And I think that's what Robbie Brennan has been so good as well, is reminded them that, like, they're a young team and there will be opportunities to win silverware again. And the way that this season has gone, I think the way Louth won that Leinster after so long without a Leinster, I'm going to stick to the whole that, you know, once you end a barren spell, you don't tend to go back to back. I don't think Louth are going to win Leinster next season. I think it's between Meath and Dublin for who wins it next year. I think Dublin will be hurt after losing it, but I think Meath will be hurt after losing the final. And I think that potential matchup between Meath and Dublin in a Leinster final, I know that we're looking far ahead here, but a matchup between Meath and Dublin in a Leinster final next season would be massive. Like, that would draw a big crowd. And that's what the Leinster Championship needed more than anything. And Meath gave it to us this season. They always have had the players coming through. They've always had that pedigree coming through, and they just needed the management team to get it right. And Robbie Brennan has got it right. Galway, they've showcased over this season that they are perfectly happy to go and have punch for punch with you. They're perfectly happy to go in a high scoring game. The one thing you can guarantee about this game, I think this game is going to be the highest scoring game of the weekend. Like, Meath and Galway are both caution to the wind type teams. They're very much put faith in their 2-point kickers. You've got Owen Frayne, Rory Kinsella down at one end. Connor Duke as well has to get a mention there. And then Galway, you've got, you know, Shane Walsh, Rob Finnerty, Matthew Thompson, Paul Conroy. They are going to be kicking 2-pointers for fun in this game, and it's going to be an absolute joy to watch. I do think Galway are a little bit further along than Meath, though. I think their experience. However, Meath beat Dublin, who then beat Galway. Now, GA math doesn't always add up. I still think it's going to finish in a triangle. I am going to say Galway beat Meath. Just, they're a little bit further along than Meath. Down did bloody them up, though. Yeah. I'm thinking Galway left with a few scratches after this. But I'm saying they get over the line by 5.
Sean O'Malley has an interesting comment in here. If there's going to be an upset this weekend, I predict Meath to beat Galway. I don't think people give Meath the respect they deserve despite beating Dublin and Kerry, whereas Galway have injuries and haven't looked convincing throughout the round robin. And that point about Galway's injuries, like, obviously anybody that watched the game against Down last weekend would have seen Shane Walsh go off with a bit of a niggle. Kenny McDade going off with a pretty serious injury as well. If those two guys don't play for Galway this weekend, how big of blows will they be?
Then I think they lose. I think it's that
Interesting.
close. I really do. I think Meath are capable of beating Galway with McDade and with Walsh, and I think without them, I think that they won't beat them. I really, really do believe that, because you look at McDade, how important he's been since he burst onto the scene in 2022. His ball carrying, his direct running, and not only that, the way he sets up scores for other people, he's so important. And then Walsh is the guy that they turn to bail them out in a lot of tight situations. He's the guy who usually, especially this season, will always contribute a goal and 5, goal and 6. He got a goal and 7 the last day against Down in a really, really tight game. It's really, really difficult. The only thing is in that comment there from Sean, great point, really, really well made, that people are still sleeping on him despite those 2 wins. However, this is a key point to bring up as well to kind of explain that. Were Dublin anywhere near their best that day against Meath? No.
I think they got shell shocked. I think once Tommy Rooney mentioned a very good point at the time as well. I keep going back to it. Dublin didn't realise until they didn't realise they were trouble until it was too late.
Yeah, I agree. So then they weren't at their best. Were Kerry at their best against Meath?
Probably not. No,
definitely not. They didn't have Paddy, didn't have Shawnee, they didn't have Paul Gainey, they didn't have Barry Dan O'Sullivan. A lot of key players missing there for Kerry. Now, I am not knocking those wins. They were fantastic Meath performances. They not only won, they dominated long spells of those games and were fully deserving of those wins. My point is that just because they beat Dublin and Kerry does not mean that they're going to beat Galway, because Galway are going to give this everything that they have. And with the injuries, I mean, Shane Walsh basically had one leg in last year's All-Ireland Quarter Final, and he still was determined enough to play a part for Galway as they beat Dublin, which shocked everyone. Now, I really believe Galway now a little bit further along than me there. I think if you played this game 2 years down the line, I think Galway will have lost some key players like Paul Conroy and players like that, and I think Meath will be better than Galway in 2 years' time. But right now, in this moment, I think Galway just have enough to hold Meath off. And I think an entertaining 4 or 5 point win for Galway is what we're going to see.
Interesting stat from last weekend. Like, I obviously did stats as we usually do for nearly every game in the championship this season. Obviously, I do as much as I can, obviously. And I did so for the Galway and Down game. And Brendan Tierney on X actually went up with quote my stats and actually said Galway had 1 wide in the entire game. I don't think I've ever seen that in terms of the stat that he put up my image as well. In fact, Galway had a shooting accuracy of 74%. And I can remember when their actual 1 wide came, and it was on the hooter at the end of the first half from Rob Finnerty.
Crazy.
Like, that is unreal, to be fair. Unreal shooting for Galway. And Shane Walsh was absolutely brilliant that day in terms of shooting. Like, Shane Walsh took 6 shots, converted 5. Rob Finnerty, okay, he wasn't at his best that day. 5 shots converted out of 8. Matthew Thompson, he got a 2-pointer as well. 4 shots, 4 converted. Is that the key for Galway? He's performed absolutely brilliantly throughout the championship this season. Obviously, Tom O'Callaghan came on and got a score. Matthew Tierney and Killian McDade took all their shots as well. Daniel Flaherty even, O'Flaherty came off the bench and converted both of his shots. Galway were seriously accurate the other day against Down, and it gets a tough team, number 1. And number 2, gets a strong win as it looked in Park Esther.
Yeah, and you're right there with Thompson. Like, he's been a gem and a real find. And you're talking about there, Walsh, talking about how they call him Magic Thompson. I mean, he has been absolutely superb, and he has been a key player in them being able to kind of deal with the absence of Damien Comer and the lack of match fitness from Damien Comer. He's kind of softened that blow, and he's filled that gap there in that team, and he's made that number 15 jersey his own. He's been absolutely superb this season. Their shooting efficiency is going to be crucial in this game because Meath has been really good throughout the season, and Meath are also showing that they're trigger happy. Like, they're happy to pull the trigger. They don't really care if the ball goes wide as long as they get the shot away. And I think lots of shots. That's a really good comment there by Rudders as well.
Yeah.
That that's why I said there, I think if McDade and Walsh aren't playing, that I think Meath will win. I think Meath don't have too many injuries problems, whereas Galway have picked up a couple from that down game and might not be at 100% in terms of match strength in this game. It's going to be really tight. But I still shade it to Galway.
Brian O'Riordan saying here, Shane Walsh injured, shoulder, looks very serious. I don't know, is that confirmed, Brian? He did go off with a shoulder injury against Down, but I don't know, is he going to play? Like, that's an interesting kind of situation, isn't it, Seamus? Because it's kind of like, I remember with this kind of injury situation, I remember the 2010s All-Ireland finals, both of them in hurling and football. Kilkenny made the error in playing Henry Shefflin earlier on, and then they bring him off after 15 minutes because he was clearly unfit, and Kilkenny go out and lose the final heavily to Tipperary. Whereas in the football final, Graham Canty was injured for Cork, but Cork actually reserved Graham Canty until the second half when they needed leaders on the pitch, and Cork went on and won that game. What do you do if you're the Galway physio and management in this situation? If Shane Walsh has a serious enough injury on the shoulder, do you keep him on the bench for later on, or do you start him?
Keep him on the bench. If he only has a half in him, I'd rather he played the second half. I think because on top of that, what tends to happen as well is you start the game, you can sometimes start cold. You can sometimes be a bit slow to the pace, whether you have Shane Walsh on the pitch or not. And I feel especially Galway need to have Shane Walsh on the pitch going down the home stretch, because this is going to be a game that goes down to the wire. And I do look at it this way and go, this has to be the year for Galway, in my opinion. If they're going to win All Ireland with this team, this has to be the year. Because with Joyce now, he's had a long time at the helm of this team. If they bow out at the quarter-final stage, then it will feel like they're further away than ever. It will feel like they're taking steps backwards. So it has to be this year for Galway. And in my opinion, to do that, they have to win this game. And I tipped Galway at the very, very beginning of the year to be one of the front runners for the All-Ireland, while I tipped Donegal to win it outright. But I'm going to tip Galway to shade this game and get into the semi-final.
I do think Galway will shade as well. Meath have done absolutely brilliant to get here with Owen Frayne and Matthew Costello. Obviously, Rory Kinsella deserves a shout out as well. He's been absolutely superb this year in terms of 2-point kicking, in terms of shooting from play as well, for a young player as well. A few interesting comments about draws here. Liam White saying draw Galway extra time. I mean, if Galway go to extra time, that could be worse for their injury kind of crisis in its own right.
Oh, that's my prediction as well. Is I predict that they're going to get through this, but like with a heavy tax. That they'll be beat up after this game.
Exactly. Rudder is saying here, what are the odds of 4 draws? Interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. But I'd say they'd be...
Isn't that perfect? Isn't that absolutely fantastic? Yeah. We have 8 teams and they're all very, very hard games to call. There's no slam dunk. There's no easy one.
To be fair, we had 2 kind of tight enough games last weekend, and then the 2 others were absolutely slam dunks.
No,
winners this weekend.
Quarterfinals.
Yeah.
We had examples over the last 5-6 seasons of quarterfinals that everybody knew who was going to win.
Yeah, exactly. So it is an interesting game, but we're both predicting Galway to go on and win it. So the final game of the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship quarter-final weekend is Armagh against Kerry on Croke Park on Sunday at 4 p.m. live on RT2. Kerry hoping to get revenge for last year's defeat to Armagh in the All-Ireland semi-final, obviously. A lot of people saying there'll be a lot of tickets sold for this game, but the commentary around this week, Paul Gainey speaking on the RT News and, with media events saying Kerry fans need to come out. Then David Clifford saying after the Cavan game that Kerry fans need to come out as well. I've experienced this with Kerry fans, obviously, in Munster Championships and All-Ireland as well, in terms of their travelling support and things like that as well. I remember back in 2012, actually, when they played an All-Ireland quarter-final against Donegal. Like Cork and Kildare was the game beforehand. The most supported teams that day by far were Donegal and Kildare. Cork were supporting the hurlers obviously last year, what they obviously do with the Cork fan base and all that. Kerry rarely come out for all of the quarterfinals. So in a way, is this a rallying cry from one of the best players in the country, David Clifford, and from Paul Gainey too?
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. Like they need them, because on top of that, the team that they're going up against, Armagh, travel very, very, very well for every game that they play. Like Armagh always take over wherever they go, whenever they go. Their fan base is absolutely fantastic. The colour, the atmosphere, the passion that they have in the stands is absolutely incredible. And there's no doubt that in a game like the All-Ireland semi-final that they had last season, that going down the home stretch, Armagh having the vast majority of fans that were in that stadium would have helped them get over that line. Because if you're a Kerry player there and you feel like every mistake is being, wahed and every score is being cheered massively, and then when you work your socks off to score for Kerry down the other end, it doesn't get the same cheer that the Armagh players get. Like that inspiration when you need to dig deep, it helps when you feel like that's why so many players refer to the fans as being the 16th man, and like the Armagh fans absolutely are 16th man to that team. And that's why I think Clifford and Gainey, I think they're very aware that this game is going to be, again, if they're going to win this, Kerry, they're going to have to absolutely fight tooth and nail for this. This is going to be a really, really hard game to win. Armagh are legit. They won that All-Ireland for a reason. They are absolutely superb. And also, beating Kerry in last year's All-Ireland semi-final shattered any fear that Armagh have towards them. And also towards getting over the line in a big, big game. Because remember that, like, before that game for Armagh last season, they were seen as a team that found a way to throw it away going down the home stretch. Like people were starting to talk about the penalty shootouts through a lens of, it was Armagh's fault that they didn't close it out and things like that. Like Rian O'Neill addressed it in his post-match interview. He said, you said you couldn't win, we couldn't win a tight game, but we won a tight game there today. Like that obviously was a massive cornerstone win for Armagh, that they turned the corner and getting over that line against Kerry. They broke a duck in terms of getting over big games and getting over tight games over the line to success. And now that they've done that, I mean, we've seen this season their confidence against Tyrone when they won a game that they might have lost in previous seasons. The confidence when they just came down to Croke Park, beat Dublin, and no big deal. They just beat them. They were just better on the day. And the confidence that they are walking around with now as All-Ireland champions, you cannot buy. And against Kerry now, I make Armagh strong favourites for this game. Because Maurice Brosnan put it really, really well on the Off the Ball pod. He's like, if David Clifford doesn't play well, Kerry lose. Like that, he talked about all of the previous defeats that Kerry have had over the last few seasons, whether it's Dublin in the All-Ireland final of 2023, whether it's Armagh last season. That David Clifford not playing well has been a common feature of when Kerry lose. And they are very, very reliant on him. He did lead the way again against Cavan with 3-7. He's in electric form, but he is going to be marshalled heavily in this game. And if Kerry are going to win, they need Shawnee, Paul Gainey. They need these guys to step up and have unbelievable performances, because David Clifford is not going to be able to carry the can all by himself. You look at Armagh, they obviously have the standout man there in Rian O'Neill, but always, time and time again, Conor Turbett, Rory Grugan, these players always chip in. Like Rian O'Neill always is the star man, and he's the one who's going to get the most attention. But Turbett, Grugan, Stephen Campbell, these lads always step up and contribute on the scoreboard for Armagh. And you look at players that have come in this season like Keane McConville, Oisin Connaughty is getting better and better and better as well. Like Armagh have a lot of threats. And I think just their defensive steeliness, the taste that they have for success now, and that hunger to get more. I think Kerry will put up a good fight, but I do think Armagh will win this.
Exactly. So, and here is a crazy stat in terms of scores, and obviously I'll do top scores and all that. And no Armagh players really popped up in them. There's a good reason for that. Armagh in the championship this year have waited for 25 different scores.
That's crazy.
It's unreal. When you look at the different scores, like Shane McParden scored recently, Tomas McCormick's obviously scored 1-1 on the pitch as well. Like Callum O'Neill is their sixth top scorer with 8 points, and he was probably not in the squad really last season. Ethan Rafferty 15 points, Ross McQuillan 16, and he's been impressive. Oisin Connaughty, a player to Oisin Connaughty is definitely a player that I wanted to mention as well, because Carol Kane did an article on the Irish News saying that, or he did mention on Twitter, if we're talking about footballer of the year right now, he said it's Oisin Connaughty that's going to win in terms of his assists, in terms of how he contributes to the Armagh play, and the fact he's got 16 points for play so far in the championship, and one of those a 2-pointer. Do you agree with Carol Kane there? Do you think Oisin Connaughty is player of the year right now as we approach the quarterfinals?
I think he's one of the front runners. I think he's one of the people that you have to consider for that position. I think there are other players who have had absolutely tremendous seasons that deserve shout-outs. I think you have to look at the way that Rory Beggan has played for Monaghan. I think he has to be considered as well. I think he's been absolutely fantastic. There's other players. I think Matthew Thompson for Galway has been absolutely magnificent as well. I think he deserves a shout. Yeah, there's a lot of players that you can consider, because this the other thing as well is, we see Michael Murphy as well. Michael Murphy has been absolutely unbelievable for Donegal. Like he's come back in a way that has surprised me, because I thought, he'd be that type. Because you remember the All-Ireland semi-final against Galway last season, when with 20 minutes to go, I remember sitting there in the stadium watching it thinking, God, if Donegal had Michael Murphy to bring off the bench now, the difference that could make. And when he came back, I thought that was maybe what he would do. I didn't think he'd be starting every game, playing the full 70 minutes every game. So yeah, he's been immense. I think he deserves a shout for it too. But Connaughton, and there's definitely people slipping my mind, by the way. David Clifford as well. 3-7. Those score lines are just getting so normal that he's putting up, but you do have to take note of that as well. Connaughton definitely is one of the front runners though.
And the thing is, from a Kerry point of view, I know it's obvious, we kind of talk about him on every podcast here, but the main guy, David Clifford, 7 goals. I see the stat recently. He's the first player to score 7 championship goals since somebody in the early 1970s.
Unbelievable.
This guy, does he get the respect he deserves at the same time, Seamus? Because I don't hear people say that David Clifford's been outstanding this year, that he's been that he's a player that's really excelling under the new rules. I hear a lot about Thompson, about Connaughton, and about Conor O'Callaghan to an extent as well for Dublin, Darren McCurry. I don't necessarily see the same amount of commentary around David Clifford. Do you feel the same? Or?
Yeah, because it's what people expect from him. He's got into that position where people know exactly how good he is and know what he's capable of. It's like Joe Canning. It's like Henry Shefflin. It's like Tony Kelly. It's like if these players have masterclass performances, they usually do. And we need to give him the flowers while he is still performing at that level. It's gas. Players like him are almost simultaneously overrated and underrated. Because to say that Clifford, I remember 2022 when people were saying that he was the greatest footballer of all time. I was like, that is a bit hasty to put that on him, when he's only in his 4th year at intercounty football, to say he's the greatest player of all time when we've had players like Peter Canavan and people like that over the last 100 years is crazy in my opinion. Mikey Sheehy, Mick O'Connell, Pat Spillane, from a Kerry perspective, they have to be considered up there in the greatest debate. And hey, maybe we'll have this debate on a podcast one time. Who is the greatest footballer of all time? I think Stephen Cluxton deserves a shout for that position as well. Brian Fenton deserves a shout too. There's a lot of players we could talk, and we won't open that Pandora box for this podcast, or else we will be heading into delusional time very, very quickly. But for Clifford, he deserves more credit that he gets this season. And he deserves less slack for when Kerry don't win. Because I remember seeing Joe Canning talk about this, and it was really, really insightful. I think it was on the Square Ball podcast, the one with William Hill. But he was there, and he was basically saying that when he was a youngster for the Galway seniors, he scored something like 2-9 in one of his first games. And he said that he felt like it was one of the worst things that ever happened to him, because any time that Galway lost, it was always, where was Joe Canning? Why didn't Joe Canning do this? And he always caught flack for whenever Galway lost. And I feel like David Clifford is right there too. Anytime Kerry lose, it's always, well, where was David Clifford? Why didn't David Clifford do this? Why didn't David Clifford do that? And I always think, lay off the guy a little bit. He always gives us all for Kerry. And it's my personal pet hate. I hate personal bashing. I hate when people go after players. Me and you talk about the games all the time. We talk about them every week. Yet I have never heard you and me, we never go at players personally. We never go at and attack a player personally, because we know that every player that crosses that white line is going out to give their best. And David Clifford's best is definitely better than most that have ever played the game. He's absolutely superb. And if he fires, Kerry have a very good chance of winning. But as Brosnan pointed out, the threat and the scare is for Kerry is just how important it is for Kerry that Clifford does fire.
Yeah, exactly. He is a really important player for Kerry. But prediction time, Seamus. Think Armagh could do the expected here, or do you think Kerry could pull it out of the line, pull it out of the bag, like they usually do historically in Croke Park?
And like they usually do when they're underestimated. Speaking from a Dublin perspective, I don't know if Brian's still watching, but 2009, Dublin were expected to beat Kerry. We all know how that ended. And Kerry were written off by everybody. And yet they absolutely blitzed Dublin and reminded us just how good they were.
Another example, Seamus, I remember Cork tanked Kerry in the league in Tralee, and then in the Munster final they beat us by 12 points.
Yep.
They're
capable of just being like, oh, you forgot how good we were. They're capable of those performances, and there's no doubt about it. We saw that.
Another brilliant example, actually, the Tyrone game in 2023. Yeah, remember that?
I remember that. Oh, I remember that. I remember being convinced that Kerry were going to win the All-Ireland that year, and then doubting it before the Tyrone game, and then Kerry had me convinced that they were going to win the All-Ireland after that, and they were flat enough in the final against Dublin, I thought. But revenge would be so sweet for Kerry. They would love that. I just feel like Armagh's confidence they got from winning the All-Ireland last season, plus the fans that are going to travel, the hunger, the determination that they have. Because I think, you remember how I'm talking about with the All-Irelands, that you don't tend to go back-to-back. The way that Armagh lost that Ulster final, and it was so hurtful to them, the way they lost that Ulster final. They've already bounced back in the group stages. They were superb. They got over it. There is still that hunger there. You can see it. They're not on the beach. They're not on the beer. Like, they want more success. I'll shade it to Armagh by 2.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Kerry, slightly so, but that's going to be a shot prediction without a doubt, obviously. Just to run through the LGFA this weekend, to the relegation playoffs in intermediate this weekend. So Down play Offaly in Abbottstown at 2 p.m. This Saturday, and then on Sunday, you have Roscommon against Wicklow in Cretchard at 2 p.m. as well on Sunday. Then of the quarterfinals in the intermediate championship, you have Laois against all games are on Sunday. You have Laois against Wexford, Laois Hire Moore Park at 2 p.m. You have Tyrone against Fermanagh at 2 p.m. in Kildress Wolftones GA Club. You have Clare against Monaghan in Kilmurray Bricken at 2 p.m. And then you have Cavan against Westmeath in Kingspan Breffni at 2 p.m. And then in the Junior Championship, you have Louth against Sligo in Dundalk at 1 p.m. Kilkenny and Derry in John Locke Park at 2 p.m. And Carlow against Antrim in Nate Watch Cullen Park at 2 p.m. as well. So looking forward to those games. So we will switch to the hurling now. There is the minor hurling final this weekend, Waterford against Clare on Saturday, and TG Car at 5:15 p.m. So a very interesting game to look forward to there. Just to run through the journeys to the final and their scores here for Waterford, so you can see the journeys to the final there. They beat Tipperary and Limerick as well on the run to the final. They lost both times to Cork, but beat Clare 121-115 as one of the Munster Hurling Championship, or Munster Minor Hurling Championship. Then beat Limerick in the All-Ireland Minor Hurling Championship quarter final 118-114, and then beat Kilkenny 221-218. They've averaged a score of 119 per game and conceded an average of 117. Look at Waterford scores, and the main guy, obviously, Cormac Spain, 8 goals and 63 points in Waterford's game so far in 7 games. Jamie Shannon with 115, Shane Power, Garrod O'Shea obviously scoring well as well from a Waterford point of view. Look at Clare's journey to the final. They beat Tipperary in the Munster Hurling Championship and beat Limerick as well, but did lose to Waterford by 6 points and Cork in that Munster game as well by 7 points. But they recovered really well in the All-Ireland series, beating Dublin 220-13 points, beating Galway 221-213, and beating Cork 27 points to 122. They've averaged a score of 280 per game and conceded an average of 118 per game. Paul Rogers has been Clare's top scorer with 2 goals and 60 points. That's Mark Rogers' brother, just for everybody that doesn't know that. John Barry with a goal and 25 points there. Liam Murphy with 4 goals and 10 points for play. You also have Ian O'Brien up there with 115, and Ben Talty with 1-4 as well. Darren Kennedy up there on the list for Clare as well. But it's an interesting pairing, Seamus. Neither won the Munster Championship. Cork won the Munster Championship in minor level, which does make this game a lot more interesting to call.
It does, because then whoever finishes the season without silverware, and that's really, really disappointing thing for both of them. They have been absolutely superb throughout this season. It's been billed under all of the TGK posts that I've put up. It's been billed as Spain versus Rogers, Cormac Spain versus Paul Rogers. And I mean, when you look at the scores that they put up there, I mean, I think what was the 863 you were saying for Cormac Spain, like frightening, especially his goal again in the semi-final was absolute thing of beauty against Kilkenny. Just the way he took it in a stride, buried it into the back of the net. And he has a kind of unique way of hitting the ball. He kind of threw it over the hurl and then came under it and just bang into the back of the net. Superb finish. Real flair player, real dangerous player. Paul Rogers as well showed his class in the semi-final win for Clare against Cork. Revenge there for them from the Munster Championship. Came back and beat them. And that sideline that Rogers got was unbelievable. That was doing the rounds on social media as well. Unbelievable technique from a superb player. And obviously runs in the blood there with his brother Mark. Both of them have had really interesting routes to the final. You have to look at the Munster game as well. Waterford beating Clare by 5 points. How much does that come into account when you're talking about this game? Obviously for Clare, they got revenge on Cork. So they're 1-1. They're one game, one win in terms of rematches, and then this is the second one. So for Waterford, that's going to be a dangerous one. I feel like there is a bit of a special energy around Waterford right now. The interview that their manager gave at the end of that game, he was talking about how it was the best minor match he's seen in his life against Kilkenny in that semi-final, and he was saying the county needed this. We need this. And I'm talking about that's a special energy that you have to look at when you can compare it to Offaly winning the under-20. Like this kind of Sligo winning the under-20 football, you can compare it to like when a county really needs a bit of success at a grade, that a special energy can develop behind the team that is giving them that. And right now, Waterford need it because they've failed to get out of the Munster round robin. They feel like they can't quite break the ceiling the way that Tipperary can, the way that Clare can, the way that Cork can, the way that Limerick can. But if their minor team can show them the way, and this exciting squad with the likes of Jamie Shanahan, with the likes of Cormac Spain, if they can lead the way, there's hope there for Waterford hurling. And I really believe they're good enough to win this. I think their win over Clare in the Munster final showcased the talent that they have. Spain as well, they have, in my opinion, the best forward at that age across the country. And I think that's going to be enough to carry them over the line.
His scoring record is absolutely ridiculous, Cormac Spain. I think Waterford will edge it just because of him as well. And to frighten the club fans even more as well, he's from Ballygunner. So,
another one.
Another one. You don't want more.
They've got, and they've got
Hutchinson.
Their dominance is going nowhere.
Yeah. No. It isn't at all. Certainly in Waterford, but we'll have to see what happens. Moving on to the Camogie as well, there's 2 games in Group 1 and then 2 games in Group 2. So the main game in Group 1 really is Tipperary against Clare. This is on Saturday at 3 p.m. live in the RAG. There's no games actually shown live on YouTube as of now, which is a real shame in terms of the Camogie Championship. But Tipperary, if they win this, they'll be in second place most likely, and Clare will be in third place and vice versa. Clare have to win this game to finish in second. You would imagine Clare will still make the knockout stages regardless. This game, Wexford against Cork. Wexford are already in a relegation playoff. This game is on Chadwick's Wexford Park at 2 p.m. on Saturday. Wexford are already in a relegation playoff against either Derry or Dublin. We'll discuss that game later. Cork only need a point to top this group and go automatically into the semi-finals. But Seamus, let's be real here. You would expect Cork to win the game against Wexford. The real game is Tipperary against Clare.
Well, I think both games are simple, in my opinion. I think Tip beat Clare and I think Cork beat Wexford. I think when you look at Tipperary's form throughout this championship as well, the only team that they can't hammer in this group has been Cork. Cork have annihilated all in their path, and I don't see anything going different in the Wexford game, where Wexford, you're saying they're already in a relegation playoff. Don't get it wrong, that can come with a sense of abandonment, that you can just go out and go for it and be a bit difficult to play against. And it will also be interesting to see if Cork rest the likes of Hannah Looney, the likes of Libby Coppinger, if they rest them players because of the football and the clashes with that, and the fact that the players were playing the football last week, they're into the football semi-final. It will be interesting to see if they're into the football quarter final. Apologies. But it'll be interesting to see if they rest the likes of Hannah Looney with eyes on upcoming fixtures and everything like that. Yeah, Cork win this game against Wexford, I think, hands down. And I think when you look at Tipperary, then the form of the likes of Karen Kennedy, who was actually named at midfield in their last game and scored a goal. Grace O'Brien in their inside forward line has been absolutely superb. Like I think she scored like 110 or something the last day. Absolutely incredible shooting from her. And then other players that they have in that forward line there, like Emma Heffernan. Like, this is a very, very talented Tipperary team with Mairead Evanston and anchoring the defence there at the back. Like, they have one of the best defenders in the country as well. So they're really, really strong throughout the team. They're one of the teams that I'm looking to try and challenge Cork, along with Galway and maybe to a lesser extent Kilkenny. But Tipperary, I think, are one team that I'm looking at, then thinking with the young players that they have coming through there, like Grace O'Brien, that maybe they could be able to put it up to Cork, but I still don't think they can beat them. I don't think anybody can beat Cork this season. But yeah, easy enough win for Tip and easy enough win for Cork.
Yeah, I think Tip and Clare Tip and Cork will win these games at the weekend. The Tip and Clare game, just for anybody or listeners, just for clarity, that's on a simple stadium hurlers, not in the RAG. As I mentioned, it's the first of a double header with the minor hurling final with Waterford and Clare. Obviously, we want more double headers, which is great to see. Look at Group 2, and there's very interesting games in these ones in terms of ramifications in the knockout stage and in terms of relegation playoffs. In terms of the knockout stage, Galway against Waterford. This game is on Saturday at 1 p.m. in Kenny Park in Galway. So the situation of this is Waterford, I think, only need a draw on this to top the group and go automatically to the semi-finals. Galway have to win to go automatically to the semi-finals. The winner goes automatically to the semi-finals, and the loser finishes in second place and gets a seeding into the quarter-finals. They'll play probably Clare in the All-Ireland quarter-finals. Looking at the other game, and this is on at Parnell Park, Dublin against Derry on Saturday at 2 p.m. in Parnell Park. This is a relegation semi-final. Just calling it straight. Whoever loses this game will be in the relegation playoff against Wexford. Derry have to win because of their points differential. Dublin, a draw will be enough for them to avoid a relegation playoff. Seamus, this game is crucial for Dublin Camogie, isn't it?
It's massive, and I think we have enough to get over the line. I think when you look at the games that we've been playing this season, we have been disappointing in terms of our results, but we still have been relatively competitive in most of the games that we've been playing. There's been some kind of heavy defeats, but we have still been putting it up and we have still been scoring fairly well in these games, and players like Emma O'Byrne, players like Ashmar have been stepping up to the fore. But when you look at Derry's results, Derry have been getting hammered in their games, and sometimes that doesn't matter. I mean, we've seen it in the Leinster Championship. We've seen Westmeath beat teams while Antrim took a bit of a beating against them, and then Antrim beat Westmeath in the game that mattered. Like, Derry could pull the trap on Dublin here in this game, and that they were ready for it kind of all along. But I really think when you look at the performances and you look at Dublin's level in terms of how Dublin lost versus how Derry lost, I think that it points to a clear favourite, and I'm going to go for Dublin to shade that one. And then in the game between Waterford and Galway, look, Galway need to win that in Kenny Park, and it's in Kenny Park, and Waterford have to make that long journey to Kenny Park to go away and play them. And it's against a Galway team who had their number in the quarterfinal last year in a game where Waterford were kind of expected to, off the back of making it to the final in 2023, expected to take more steps forward. But Galway had their number that day. They put a bit of a muzzle on Beth Carton and they were able to get over the line. Waterford's forwards so far this championship have been in red hot form. Niamh Rockett has been fantastic. Beth Carton has been brilliant again. Galway's defence, though, was really, really good. You got Roisin Black there, in my opinion, is the best fullback in the country. I really believe that. And Camogie, I think she's absolutely brilliant. And then going forward, they still have really, really dangerous players. Niamh Mallon, these types. So with home advantage, I'm going to shade it to Galway. And I think Waterford will finish second. And I think Dublin will do enough against Derry to avoid a relegation final against Wexford.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Dublin will beat Derry, and I think Galway will do enough to beat Waterford. Just to mention as well, the Premier Junior Camogie Championship. So Louder up against, all these games are on Saturday, just at 2 o'clock. All three of them in this game this weekend. So Louder playing Roscommon in Colin. Wicklow are playing Armagh in Auckram, and Tyrone are playing Laois in Killyclare. So those are the games of the Premier Junior Championship in the Cabogie this weekend. So we have reached the end. Just Brian O'Riordan has a comment in here about us in general. Matthew and Seamus, did you manage to get your semi-final tickets to Dublin Cork? There'll be a load of queues to get on. They're expecting a sellout. The answer is we did. We did.
Yes,
so we're all sorted for next week. But that is the discussion for next week's podcast for the hurling preview. So check that out if you haven't already. It'd be brilliant if Aaron and yourself could come on and we'd have a bit of a barney of each other. But we'll see. Yes. We'll see what happens in terms of that podcast. But in terms of this weekend's edition, that is the end of that. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff in terms of the podcast this week. Thanks to Seamus for hopping on today. Thanks to Capture Athletics for sponsoring today's show. Once again, thanks to everybody that commented. I'm looking at the list here in terms of everybody that commented. So Sean O'Malley, Acers, Killian McMullen, Gavin O'Reilly, Brian O'Riordan, Denise, Pádraig, Liam White, and Rudders. Thanks to everybody that commented on the podcast this evening. Thanks to you for watching at home as well. Ring the bell for any notifications, as I mentioned, and we'll see you next week. Enjoy the games at the weekend and take care.